A leopard cub grabbed a vet's arm and begged not to leave. But what happened next will break you. What looks like a routine rescue turns into something far darker, because this cub isn't just scared. It's holding on to a secret that powerful men will do anything to keep buried. When the vet refuses to let go, she's pulled into a dangerous world of forged papers, hidden scars, and a terrifying plan that could destroy both her and the animal she swore to protect. Flames will rise, loyalties will shatter, and the truth will be more shocking than anyone expects. Why would a tiny cub cling for its life? What dark secret is it warning her about, and will she survive long enough to uncover it? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on Dr. Lark Pennington's small veterinary clinic as she heard the distinctive rumble of a delivery truck pulling up outside. Through the weathered window, she watched a courier struggle with a large wooden crate, its edges worn and splintered. Her heart quickened. Unscheduled deliveries usually meant trouble. "Sign here," the courier grunted, shoving a clipboard at her while dragging the crate into her examining room. The sound of scratching and whimpering from within made Lark's veterinary instincts kick into high alert. "What's in there?" she asked, though she already had a sinking feeling. The courier just shrugged and tapped the clipboard impatiently. With careful hands, Lark approached the crate. The moment she worked the latch free, the lid burst open and a blur of spotted fur launched itself at her. Sharp teeth clamped onto her forearm, and Lark bit back a cry of surprise. A leopard cub, no more than 3 months old, hung desperately from her arm, its eyes wild with fear. "Hey there, little one," she whispered soothingly, ignoring the sting. "It's okay. You're safe now." The courier cleared his throat. "Paperwork's all in order, ma'am. Just need your signature for delivery to Sterling Baird's game ranch." Lark's trained eye took in the cub's condition, even as it maintained its grip on her arm. The tremors running through its small body weren't just from fear. Dehydration had set in. What worried her more was the way it kept making eye contact, showing an unnatural begging behavior that spoke of improper human handling. "I need to examine this animal before signing anything," she said firmly. The courier shuffled uncomfortably but didn't leave. Using her free hand, Lark reached for her microchip scanner. The cub flinched but held on as she ran the device over its neck. The scanner beeped, and Lark's eyes narrowed at the reading. This chip was registered to Happy Trail Zoo, a facility she knew had been shut down months ago for numerous violations. More concerning was the federal hold tag attached to the registration. "This isn't right," she muttered, just as heavy boots echoed on her clinic's wooden porch. Holt Keegan filled the doorframe, his wildlife warden uniform wrinkled despite its authority. His perpetual squint seemed more pronounced today, his thin face tight with barely contained irritation. "Dr. Pennington," he drawled, producing a stack of papers. "I have orders here to escort this animal to Sterling Baird's facility immediately." Lark stood straighter, despite the cub still attached to her arm. "This animal is showing signs of severe distress, Warden Keegan. It needs immediate medical attention." "The paperwork's in order," Keegan insisted, stepping closer. His cologne couldn't quite mask the smell of stale cigarettes. "Mr. Baird has all the necessary permits." "Then you won't mind if I verify them," Lark replied, keeping her voice steady. "This chip shows a federal hold tag, and I'm legally obligated to report that." Keegan's face darkened. "Dr. Pennington, I strongly suggest you reconsider any delay. Defiance can have consequences, especially for a clinic operating on such thin margins." The threat hung in the air like the heavy Texas heat. Lark felt sweat trickle down her back, but her resolve strengthened. She'd lost one career already. For speaking up about malpractice, she wouldn't back down now. "I need to stabilize this cub first," she said firmly. It's severely dehydrated and showing signs of psychological distress. I'm placing it in isolation for observation. With gentle but firm movements, she managed to disengage the cub's jaw from her arm. The small puncture wound stung, but she'd had worse. She quickly moved the frightened animal to her isolation unit, a secure room with proper climate control and monitoring equipment. "This is your last warning," Keegan called after her. "That cub leaves with me today, or there'll be trouble." Lark closed the isolation room door firmly behind her. "Then there'll be trouble, Warden. I'm following protocol, and you're welcome to file a complaint with the State Veterinary Board." After Keegan stormed out, slamming the clinic door hard, enough to rattle the windows, Lark's hands finally started shaking. She cleaned her wounds carefully, then picked up her phone to call the one person she knew she could trust. "Nevin, it's Lark. I need your advice on something." Nevin Cross's steady voice helped calm her racing thoughts. She explained the situation: the cub's condition, the suspicious paperwork, Keegan's threats. "Be careful, Lark," Nevin warned, his military background evident in his measured tone. "Sterling Baird has powerful friends, and Keegan's known for holding grudges. Document everything. I can come by first thing tomorrow to help you verify that chain of custody." "Thanks, Nevin." Lark glanced through the isolation room's window, where the exhausted cub had finally fallen into a fitful sleep. "I know I'm probably asking for trouble, but I couldn't just hand it over. Something's very wrong here." "Trust your instincts," Nevin replied. "But watch your back. Want me to swing by tonight?" Lark considered it, but shook her head, even though he couldn't see her. "No, I'll be fine. The security system's good, and I need to monitor the cub through the night anyway." After hanging up, Lark went through her closing routine. The old generator hummed to life, backing up the critical systems that kept her clinic running through the unreliable summer power grid. She double-checked all the doors and windows, then settled in at her desk with the cub's paperwork spread out before her. The evening sun cast long shadows through the windows as she began her research, determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious delivery. The weight of her decision sat heavy on her shoulders, but every time she looked at the sleeping cub, she knew she'd made the right choice. Whatever consequences came, she would face them standing firm in her convictions. Through the isolation room window, the tiny leopard's chest rose and fell in peaceful rhythm, finally feeling safe enough to truly rest. Lark touched her bandaged forearm, remembering the desperate strength of the cub's grip, not aggression, but a plea for help. Sometimes, she reflected, doing the right thing meant standing your ground, even when you had to stand alone. The morning sun crept through the clinic's windows, casting long shadows across the examination room where Lark had spent a restless night monitoring the leopard cub. Her phone buzzed for the second time that morning. Wildlife Warden Holt Keegan again. "Dr. Pennington, this is your final notice. I have full authority to seize that animal." Keegan's voice crackled through the speaker, harder than before. "The transport order is signed by the state director himself." Lark watched through the blinds as the courier's van remained parked in the lot, its driver lounging against the hood, occasionally speaking into a phone. Her stomach churned with an all-too-familiar feeling. The phone rang again, but this time it wasn't Keegan. The name on the screen made her blood run cold. Dr. Marcus Wheeler, her former supervisor from the State Wildlife Department. The man who had watched her career crumble 5 years ago after she'd reported violations at a major research facility. "Lark," Wheeler's voice was clipped, professional. "Words reach me about your situation. Don't make the same mistake twice. Sign the papers, release the cub. Some battles aren't worth fighting. With all due respect, Dr. Wheeler, this cub shows signs of abuse. The sedation levels in its system. Sometimes compliance is survival, Lark. You remember how it went last time. The line went dead, leaving Lark with trembling hands and memories of unemployment notices and blocked job applications. She turned to her work, methodically documenting everything she found. The cub's physical examination revealed needle marks that didn't match standard vaccination sites. Blood tests showed traces of sedatives that no reputable facility would use for transport, dangerous combinations that spoke of amateur handling and desperate measures. The cub's behavior told an even darker story. Every time someone approached the cage, it pressed itself against the bars, reaching out with its paw. Not aggression, but learned behavior. Someone had trained it to beg, likely for food or water. The clinic's back door opened with a familiar squeak. Nevin Cross slipped in, his tall frame casting a shadow across the floor. His presence brought an immediate sense of relief. Without a word, he began checking the locks on all the doors and windows. "I brought supplies," he said quietly, setting down a duffel bag. "Food, water, first aid kit. Whatever happens, we're prepared." He paused, studying the cub. "Have you verified the paperwork?" "The microchip doesn't match their documents. And look at these test results." Lark showed him the blood work. "This isn't standard protocol. Something's very wrong here." Nevin nodded grimly. "Then we hold the line. Until we get verification. That cub stays here." As the afternoon wore on, unfamiliar vehicles began appearing on the rural road outside the clinic. First one pickup truck, then another, parking just within sight of the building. As dusk approached, their headlights winked out one by one, but the vehicles remained, silent sentinels in the growing darkness. Lark's fingers flew across her keyboard, attaching photos and test results to an email addressed to the district attorney's office. She hit send, then immediately began printing backup copies of everything. The blood work, the microchip data, photos of the injuries, her detailed notes. She couldn't risk losing the evidence. The cub needed feeding again. As Lark prepared the formula, her hands steady despite her racing heart, she found herself talking softly to the small creature. "We're going to keep you safe," she whispered, cradling it carefully. Right on cue, its paw reached out, grabbing for her sleeve that heartbreaking learned response that spoke of desperation and survival. The generator's hum seemed to deepen as night settled in, its steady drone both comforting and ominous. A strong gust of wind rattled the back door, making them both jump. Nevin moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. "Movement by the fence," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "At least 3 figures." Lark's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. "Kill the lights," she whispered. Darkness enveloped them, broken only by the soft glow of emergency. "Backup lights." She held the cub closer, feeling its rapid heartbeat against her chest. "If they come in, we move with the cub. No matter what happens, we don't let them take it. Not until we know the truth." The pressure that had been building all day settled into a steel resolve in her chest. She'd lost everything once before for standing up for what was right. This time would be different. This time she wasn't alone, and this time she had proof. The cub's paw clutched at her sleeve again, and she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Through the darkness, they waited, listening to the wind and the generator's hum, while unknown figures moved in the shadows beyond the fence. Every sound seemed amplified. The cub's soft breathing, Nevin's careful footsteps as he moved between windows, the distant rumble of engines keeping watch on the road. The night stretched ahead of them, full of uncertainty but marked by one absolute truth. They would not back down. The explosion rocked the clinic with such force that medical supplies tumbled from the shelves, scattering across the floor like autumn leaves. The back door burst inward with a deafening crack, hanging from its hinges like a broken wing. Through the settling dust, 3 masked figures surged into the storage area, their dark clothing melting into the shadows. "They're here!" Nevin shouted. From down the hall, his voice cutting through the chaos, the intruders knocked over a red metal fuel can, sending gasoline sloshing across the concrete floor. The sharp chemical smell filled the air as the liquid spread in widening pools. Lark's heart hammered against her ribs as she rushed to the examination room where the Leopard Cub lay in the corridor. Nevin wrestled with a heavy metal storage cabinet, trying to drag it across the hallway as a barrier. The scraping sound of metal against concrete echoed through the building. Sparks suddenly flew from an electrical outlet where the spilled fuel had reached, and in that terrible moment, the generator ignited. The explosion sent a mushroom cloud of thick, black smoke billowing through the corridors. The fire alarm's shrill scream pierced the air, its strobing red lights cutting through the thickening haze. "Get the sedative," Lark called out to Nevin as she grabbed a thick blanket from the supply closet. Her hands shook as she heard the crackle of flames getting closer. "We need to move fast." Nevin's medical training kicked in as he quickly prepared the proper dosage. The cub, already agitated by the chaos, growled softly as Nevin approached with practiced calm. "Easy there, little one," he murmured, administering the sedative with gentle efficiency. The ceiling tiles above them began to crackle and pop from the intense heat. Lark worked quickly, wrapping the drowsy cub in the blanket, creating a secure cocoon. The smoke was getting thicker, making their eyes water and throats burn. "We can't get out through the back," Nevin coughed, pulling his shirt over his nose. The temperature in the building was rising rapidly, and sweat trickled down there. Faces. Lark scanned the room frantically, her gaze landing on the window. "There," she pointed. Without hesitation, Nevin grabbed a metal stool and swung it at the glass. The window shattered, sending shards tinkling to the ground and letting in a blessed rush of cool night air. They could hear the crackle of flames, getting closer as they carefully maneuvered the wrapped cub through the broken window. Just as they made it outside, heavy footsteps pounded behind them. One of the masked intruders had circled around the building and was closing in fast. Nevin spun around, his years of handling difficult situations evident in his fluid movement. As the pursuer lunged forward, Nevin executed a practice shove that sent the man stumbling backward, buying them precious seconds to escape. The sound of groaning metal and splintering wood filled the air as they sprinted toward Lark's truck, parked at the far end of the lot. The cub, safely sedated, remained still in their arms as they ran. Behind them, the clinic's roof gave an almighty groan before collapsing inward with a thunderous crash. Lark fumbled with her keys, hands trembling as she unlocked the truck. Nevin carefully placed the cub in the back seat, securing it with makeshift restraints fashioned from seat belts. They jumped into the front seats just as another explosion rocked the night, and Lark gunned the engine, tires squealing as they tore away from the scene. In the rearview mirror, flames licked at the dark Texas sky, painting it in angry oranges and reds. The clinic, her life's work, her dream, everything she built over the years, was disappearing into inferno. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept her hands steady on the wheel. "Turn here," Nevin directed, his voice gentle but firm. "Take the dirt road off Highway 27. I know an old barn we can use. It's been abandoned for years, but it's solid. We'll be safe there until we can figure out our next move." Lark gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white with tension. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Someone had been willing to burn down her clinic, to destroy everything she'd worked for, just to get this cub. Which could only mean one thing. She'd been right all along about the illegal trafficking. They just proved how desperate they are, she said, her voice hoarse from the smoke, but filled with determination. "Whatever's going on here, it's bigger than we thought." The truck bounced along the rough country road, headlights cutting through the darkness as they left the glow of the fire behind. The cub stirred slightly in the back seat, and Lark checked on it in the rearview mirror. Despite everything that had just happened, the animal's safety remained her primary concern. Nevin studied the passing landscape, alert for any signs of pursuit. The barn's about 3 miles ahead. We'll need to gather evidence, make some calls, but right now we need to disappear. The night enveloped them as they drove deeper into the hill country, leaving behind the burning remains of Lark's clinic. The fire had taken her business, her equipment, and her records, but it had also given her something invaluable, proof that she was on to something big, something that powerful people wanted to keep hidden in the dim light of the old barn. Lark gently placed the leopard cub on a makeshift examination table, really, just a sturdy workbench covered with clean blankets. The nervous animal maintained its grip on her sleeve, those tiny claws holding fast like it was afraid she'd disappear. The emergency lights they'd set up cast a soft glow across the wooden walls, making shadows dance as Nevin moved around, setting up their temporary clinic. "Easy there, little one," Lark whispered, carefully detaching the cub's paw so she could begin a proper examination. Her hands moved with practiced care over its small body, noting every detail she hadn't been able to document in the chaos at the clinic. The cub whimpered, but stayed surprisingly still, as if used to being handled under the steady beam of her penlight. Something caught her attention. "Nevin, come look at this." She parted the fur along the cub's side, revealing a thin, pale line of scarred tissue. "This is a surgical scar, and it's completely healed." Nevin leaned in close, frowning. "But according to the paperwork, this cub is only 3 months old." "Exactly. This scar is at least 6 months old." Lark's fingers found another mark, then another. "There are multiple incision sites. Someone's been operating on this baby long before the dates on those documents. The cub reached for her again, paw seeking her arm with an almost desperate need for contact. Lark's heart ached at the behavior. It wasn't natural for a wild animal, even a young one. "See how it clings? This isn't normal fear response. This is learned behavior, conditioned over time." As she documented each finding with her phone's camera, a notification popped up on her screen, an encrypted message. Her breath caught when she saw the sender's name, Imogene Baird. "Sterling's daughter?" Nevin asked, peering over her shoulder. "I thought she cut ties with her father years ago." "She did." Lark's fingers hovered over the message, which makes this very interesting. The message was brief. "Need to talk. Urgent. Lives at stake. Call this number, secure line only." Lark glanced at Nevin, who nodded and moved to check the barn's perimeter again. She dialed the number using a secure app, her heart pounding as it connected. "Dr. Pennington?" The voice was refined but carried an edge of urgency. "This is Imogene Baird. Thank you for taking my call. We don't have much time. I'm listening. That cub you rescued, it's part of something bigger. There's a farewell hunt planned at the private airstrip just outside of town. The cub's mother." Imogene's voice cracked slightly. "She's crated in a hangar there. They're using her as bait for some of my father's elite clients before the federal auditors arrive next week." Lark's free hand clenched into a fist. "The paperwork ordering the cub's return. Forged. Keegan's work. He's been covering my father's tracks for years." Imogene's bitter laugh held no humor. "I've watched them get away with this for too long. I have access codes, security schedules, everything you'd need to expose it all. Why now? Because I'm done being complicit through silence. But this has to be undeniable. No room for my father's lawyers to muddy the waters. Are you willing to help?" Lark looked at the cub, now curled up on the blankets, still reaching for whenever she moved away. She thought of its mother, waiting in a dark hangar for a death staged as sport. Her gaze met Nevin's as he returned from his patrol. "What do you think?" she asked him, after explaining Imogene's offer. This would be dangerous. They've already shown they're willing to burn down my clinic. Nevin's face was grim. If we hand the cub back now, knowing what we know, it goes right back into their killing machine, Lark finished. Or we expose everything in broad daylight. They shared. A long look, years of friendship and trust, speaking volumes in the silence. Finally, Lark brought the phone back to her ear. Send me everything you have, Imogene. We'll make sure everyone sees the truth. Over the next hour, Imogene transmitted access codes, guard rotations, and detailed maps of the airstrip facility. Lark's fingers flew over her phone as she forwarded key information to the district attorney's office, requesting them to be ready with a warrant and to monitor an upcoming live stream. This has to be coordinated perfectly, Lark told Nevin as they bent over the facility maps. If we miss our window, they'll destroy the evidence, and probably us with it. The cub stirred in its sleep, making soft mewing sounds. Lark stroked its head, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders. We're going to make this right, she promised quietly. For both you and your mama. The old barn's rafters creaked softly as Lark, Nevin, and Imogene huddled around a battery-powered lantern, their faces cast in warm light as they planned their dangerous mission. Spread across a weathered workbench were blueprints of the airstrip facility, carefully marked with red circles showing camera placement points. We'll need at least 6 cameras to cover all the critical areas, Nevin said, tapping specific locations on the map. Here by the holding pens, here covering the permit office, and definitely here where Sterling likes to brag to his clients. His finger traced each spot with precision born from years of sanctuary security work. Imogene nodded, her face tight with determination. Dad always takes new clients on the same tour route. He'll stop at each pen, showing off the animals like prizes. Her voice caught slightly. He gets especially boastful near the leopard enclosure. Lark studied the facility layout, memorizing every detail while absently stroking the cub that remained curled against her side. How long do we have? Between arrival and when the hunt starts? Usually about 45 minutes, Imogene replied. Dad likes to build up the anticipation, make his clients feel special. He'll go through all the paperwork, brag about his operation, show off the animals. She pulled out a set of keys. I can get you access to the back storage areas where they keep the falsified permits. Nevin unpacked his equipment bag, laying out tiny cameras and transmitters. These will feed directly to a secure server the DA can access in real time. Even if they find some of the cameras, they can't stop the stream once it starts. He began testing each device, checking connections methodically. The cub whimpered softly, and Lark gathered it closer. What about local law enforcement? We can't. Trust Keegan's people. Already handled, Nevin said. I reached out to Sheriff Martinez in Kendall County. She's positioning deputies just outside jurisdiction, ready to move in once we have evidence. They spent hours rehearsing every detail. Imogene walked them through staff rotations, security patterns, and blind spots. Nevin programmed timestamps and tested transmission strength from various points marked on the map. Lark memorized her. Roll, appear compliant, deliver the cub, then keep Sterling talking while cameras captured everything. We'll need specific signals, Lark said, drawing a rough diagram. 1 tap means cameras are active. 2 means law enforcement is moving in. 3 means abort everything. They practiced the subtle gestures until they became muscle memory. Imogene demonstrated the precise timing of staff changes when security would be minimally attentive. Nevin configured his phone to monitor all camera feeds simultaneously as midnight approached. Lark pulled on a fresh pair of medical gloves. With steady hands, she wrote 5 simple words on the palm, for the mother. It was a promise to both leopards, the cub still clinging to her sleeve and the mother waiting in that hangar. She folded the glove carefully and tucked it into her jacket pocket, close to her heart. The eastern sky began to lighten, gray dawn seeping through the barn's weathered boards. Time to move. Lark prepared a transport carrier while Nevin did final equipment checks. Imogene's phone buzzed, her father's staff expecting her to help prepare for the special clients. "Remember," Imogene said, "I'll keep everyone focused on arrival preparations. That should give you clear access to the back areas." The Cub went into the carrier without struggle, though its eyes remained fixed on Lark. They loaded equipment into 2 vehicles, cameras and monitors concealed in ordinary tool bags and medical cases. Every movement was measured, every detail double-checked. "One last thing," Nevin said, handing them each an encrypted phone. "If anything goes wrong, these will reach the DA directly. One button, instant connection." Lark took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what they were about to attempt. One mistake could not only destroy their chance at exposing Sterling's operation, but could put them all in danger. The morning air felt electric with tension as they prepared to leave. They pulled out separately, Lark first with the Cub, Nevin following at a discreet distance, while Imogene took a different route to arrive ahead of them. The sunrise painted the sky in streaks of pink and gold, but Lark barely noticed, focused entirely on the road ahead and the precise timing they'd planned. From the passenger seat, the Cub made small chirping sounds. "Almost there, little one," Lark whispered. "We're gonna make this right." Nevin's voice came through her earpiece, calm and steady. All cameras showing green. Signal strength perfect. She could see the airstrip now, its gravel drive stretching out before her. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as she spotted a familiar silhouette at the gate. Keegan, clipboard in hand, his smile fixed and artificial. As he waited to check her and Dot in her rearview mirror, she caught glimpses of Nevin's vehicle, maintaining perfect distance. Somewhere inside the facility, Imogene was keeping staff busy with preparations for the supposed client arrival. Everything was in position. Every person knew their role. Every camera was ready to record. Lark touched the glove in her pocket, feeling the written promise through the fabric. The truth about Sterling's operation would be exposed today. No more animals would suffer in silence. She straightened her shoulders and drove toward the gate where Keegan waited, his too-tight smile never wavering. Inside the cavernous hangar, Lark's heart thundered against her ribs as she cradled the Leopard Cub. The massive metal doors had groaned open to reveal a scene that made her stomach turn. Rows of crude baiting pens lined the concrete floor, their metal bars casting long shadows in the harsh fluorescent lighting. The air hung heavy with the musty smell of animals and fear. Dot in the largest pen, a full-grown female leopard, paced restlessly. Her beautiful spotted coat was dull from stress, her movements frantic as she searched for her stolen cub. The sight made Lark's throat tighten with emotion. She forced her face to remain neutral, though her arms instinctively tightened around the baby leopard. Sterling Baird strutted across the hangar floor like he owned the world, his expensive boots clicking against concrete. "As you can see, everything here is completely legitimate," he announced, gesturing broadly. "My facility has grandfathered rights going back 3 generations. These animals are my property, plain and simple." Behind him, Keegan pulled a document from his jacket pocket with a flourish. "And here's the permit, all properly filed." He held up the forged paperwork, unwittingly positioning it perfectly for the hidden cameras Nevin had mounted in the rafters. Lark caught sight of Imogene hovering near the office door, her father's assistant clipboard clutched tight to her chest. Though her face appeared calm, her white-knuckle grip betrayed her nerves. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement of what was at stake. Nevin moved casually along the back wall, pretending to examine the facility while actually positioning. The final relay that would ensure their live stream reached the district attorney's office. His movements were smooth and unhurried, years of sanctuary work having taught him how to move around dangerous animals without drawing attention. "Well then," Lark said carefully, shifting the cub in her arms, "I suppose you'll want to take custody now." The words tasted bitter in her mouth, but she kept her tone professional. As she spoke, she made the prearranged hand signal. 3. Fingers briefly pressed against the cub's back. Within seconds, the cameras began streaming everything to the district attorney's office. Every illegal pen, every forged document, every damning word from Sterling's own mouth was being recorded and transmitted in real time. The cub squirmed in her arms, letting out a pitiful mewl that its mother answered from her cage. The sound seemed to echo off the metal walls, a cry of separation that cut straight to Lark's heart. She found herself counting seconds, praying their backup would arrive before she had to actually hand over the baby animal. Then came the beautiful sound of sirens in the distance, growing steadily closer. Red and blue lights began strobing through the high windows, casting rotating shadows across the hangar floor. Sterling's face darkened as police cruisers from the neighboring county screeched to a halt outside. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his confident swagger vanishing. "Keegan, handle this." The game warden stepped forward, puffing up with false authority. "This is my jurisdiction," he announced as uniformed officers began pouring through the door. "You have no right to be here. I demand you leave immediately." For one breathless moment, it seemed to work. The officers hesitated at Keegan's official sounding pronouncement. But then their sergeant stepped forward, warrant in hand. "Actually, sir, we have every right to be here. Please step aside." The machinery of justice ground forward with beautiful precision. Officers moved through the hangar with cameras and evidence bags, documenting every illegal pen and questionable modification. Others began reading rights to a sputtering Sterling and a rapidly paling Keegan. Lark stood rooted to the spot, the weight of the cub in her arms suddenly feeling lighter. She watched as an animal control officer approached the mother leopard's cage with tranquilizer gear, preparing to safely transport her to a proper sanctuary. For the first time since this ordeal began, Lark dared to believe both mother and cub would survive. "You can't do this," Sterling was shouting as an officer began to handcuff him. "I have rights. This is my property." But his protests fell on deaf ears as more police units arrived. The flash of cameras documented every illegal setup, every forged permit, every violation that had been hidden behind money and influence for far too long. Officers moved with quiet efficiency, securing the scene and gathering evidence that would be impossible to ignore or cover up. A thin layer of victory settled over Lark like morning frost, beautiful but delicate. She watched as Imogene gave her statement to a detective, describing years of illegal activities she had witnessed. Nevin stood nearby, carefully transferring the camera footage to secure drives for the prosecution. The cub snuggled closer to Lark's chest, seeking comfort in all the chaos. Through the barred windows, dawn was breaking over the Texas hills, painting the sky in shades of hope. The first phase of their dangerous gambit had worked. The evidence was captured. The authorities were involved, and the truth was finally coming to light. The victory was short-lived. In the chaos of officers documenting evidence and securing suspects, movement near the transport vehicle caught Lark's attention. Keegan had slipped away from the group, and before anyone could react, he sprinted toward the vehicle containing the mother leopard. "Stop him!" Lark shouted, but her warning came too late. The game warden leaped into the driver's seat of the transport truck. The engine roared to life, tires squealing against concrete as he accelerated toward the side gate. The heavy metal gate groaned and swung open under the truck's momentum, the sound of twisting metal echoing through the early morning air. Nevin was already running, his face set with determination. "Get the cub to safety," he called out to Lark. Without hesitation, Lark thrust the leopard cub into Imogene's arms. "Keep him safe," she ordered, then sprinted toward her truck, keys already in hand. The weight of responsibility pressed against her chest. They had come too far to lose everything now. Dark clouds had gathered overhead, and rain began to fall in heavy sheets across the highway. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the downpour as Lark pursued the transport vehicle, with Nevin close behind in his own truck. Through the curtain of rain, she could barely make out the outline of Keegan's vehicle ahead. "Dispatch. This is Dr. Pennington." She spoke into her phone on speaker. "Warden Keegan has commandeered a transport vehicle containing an endangered leopard. We're heading east on County Road 27. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the speaker. "Copy that, Dr. Pennington. Deputies are being vectored from both directions. Be advised, the county bridge is showing signs of flooding from upstream storms." Lark's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She knew exactly where Keegan was headed. The old county bridge that spanned the river gorge. It was notorious for flooding during heavy rains, and right now, the water would be rising fast through the rain-streaked windshield. Hazard lights blinked like desperate signals. Nevin's headlights appeared in her rearview mirror, a reassuring presence as they pursued Keegan through the deteriorating weather. The rain hammered against the roof of her truck, creating a deafening rhythm that matched her racing heart. This wasn't just about gathering evidence anymore. A living, breathing creature was trapped in that transport crate, probably terrified as the vehicle swayed and bounced along the rain-slicked road. The mother leopard's fate was literally hanging in the balance, chained inside a metal box at the mercy of a desperate man. They crested a rise in the road, and Lark's breath caught in her throat. Through the curtain of rain, she could see Keegan's vehicle on the bridge ahead. The transport truck was fishtailing wildly on the slick concrete surface, its tires struggling to find purchase. The brake lights flared bright crimson through the gray sheets of rain, casting an eerie glow on the water that was already beginning to lap at the bridge's edges. Horror struck as the transport vehicle clipped the guardrail with a sickening screech of metal on metal. The crate containing the mother leopard lurched violently to one side, the chain securing it groaning under the strain. The transport vehicle slewed sideways, coming to a crooked stop in the middle of the bridge. Water foamed and churned beneath. The bridge, its normally peaceful surface, transformed into a raging torrent by the upstream storm. The rain continued to fall in heavy sheets as Keegan emerged from the vehicle's cab, and Lark's blood ran cold at the sight of the rifle in his hands. His expression was stony, devoid of emotion, as he took up position beside the transport. Lark brought her truck to a stop at a safe distance, her windshield wipers slapping frantically against the downpour. Behind her, Nevin's truck pulled up, its headlights joining hers in illuminating the dangerous tableau on the bridge. Through the rain and mist, she could see Keegan's figure, rifle at the ready, standing between them and the precious cargo he had nearly sent plunging into the floodwaters below. Rain hammered the bridge as Lark faced down Keegan's rifle. Her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "Think about what you're doing," she said, raising her empty hands in the downpour. "It's over, Keegan. Let's end this right." The metal transport crate containing the mother leopard teetered precariously at the bridge's edge. Through the rain and rushing water below, Lark could hear the big cat's anxious roar, muffled but desperate. The sound tore at her heart. Keegan's face was a mask of cold fury. "Back off, Pennington. Last warning." His finger tightened on the trigger as rain streamed down his face. "You've ruined everything. Years of work, gone because you couldn't mind. Your own business." Lightning flashed, illuminating the scene in stark white. Keegan with his rifle, the crate balanced on the edge, and Nevin silently working his way along the bridge rail through the curtain of rain. Lark took another deliberate step forward, drawing Keegan's focus to her and away from Nevin's approach. "The only thing I ruined was an illegal operation," Lark said, rain dripping from her hair. "Those animals deserve better than being hunted for sport. You know that, deep down." "Shut up," Keegan shouted over a crack of thunder. His boots scraped against the wet concrete as he shifted position. "You don't understand anything. Sterling Baird owns this county. Even if you exposed us, he'll make it all go away. Money always wins." The crate rocked in the wind, chains rattling. The mother leopard's roars grew more frantic. Lark's chest tightened at the sound. After everything they'd been through to save her, she couldn't let it end like this. "Maybe money usually wins," Lark said, taking another careful step. "But not this time. We have everything documented. The DI has the live stream footage. It's done, Keegan." His face contorted with rage. "Nothing's done until I say it is." In a burst of movement, he lashed out with his boot, kicking the crate hard. The rusted chains holding it snapped with a sharp crack. Time seemed to slow as Lark watched in horror. The crate tipped over the edge, scraping against concrete. It slammed into the bridge supports with a thunderous bang before plummeting into the churning river below. Lark didn't think. She acted on pure instinct. Throwing off her jacket, she vaulted over the rail and dove into the torrent after the crate. The impact of hitting the water felt like concrete, driving the air from her lungs. The river's current instantly grabbed her, tumbling her in its icy grip. Fighting panic, she forced her eyes open in the murky water. The current had already dragged the crate several yards downstream. Lark kicked hard, pushing through the water with desperate strokes. Her lungs burned for air, but she couldn't surface yet. She had to reach the crate first. Above, muffled by water, she heard the sharp crack of a gunshot. Her heart seized, wondering if Keegan had shot at her, but she couldn't worry about that now. The mother leopard's life depended on these next few moments. Her fingers brushed metal, and she grabbed hold of the crate, feeling blindly for the latch mechanism. The current battered them both, making it nearly impossible to maintain her grip. On the slick surface, her first attempt to open the primary catch failed. Her numb fingers couldn't get enough purchase. Dark spots danced at the edges of her vision as her oxygen-starved body screamed for air. But surfacing now meant losing the crate in the current. She had to find the secondary latch. It was their only chance. Desperately, she ran her hands over the crate's surface again. There, her fingers found the backup catch. Summoning her last reserves of strength, she twisted it hard. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the crate's door swung open with a rush of bubbles. A powerful form shot past her. The mother leopard, finally free. The big cat's powerful muscles propelled her upward through the water, pushing toward air and life. Hope surged in Lark's chest even as her own strength began to fade. The mother leopard's escape had torn the crate from Lark's grip. The current seized her again, tumbling her through the dark water. Her lungs were on fire now, consciousness starting to gray at the edges, but she'd done it. She'd freed the cat. That knowledge gave her the strength for one final kick toward the surface. Fighting against the river's crushing grip up on the bridge, Nevin had used Lark's dive as a distraction to close the distance to Keegan. As the warden's attention followed Lark into the water, Nevin tackled him hard to the deck. The rifle discharged once into the air as they grappled on the wet concrete. Rain still pouring down around them. The mother leopard broke the surface first, powerful strokes carrying her toward the riverbank. Moments later, Lark's head emerged several yards downstream, gasping desperately for air as the current continued to pull at her. But she was alive. They were both alive. Against impossible odds, she'd managed to free the magnificent animal. From its metal prison through the rain and the roar of the river, she could hear sirens approaching. Help was coming. The mother leopard had already disappeared into the thick brush along the riverbank, finally free to vanish into the wild where she belonged. Lark let herself float for a moment, relief mixing with exhaustion as the adrenaline began to fade. The cold water tugged at her limbs, but she'd done what she set out to do. She'd kept her promise for the mother, for the cub, for all the animals who deserve better than being treated as playthings for the wealthy and corrupt. Lark broke through the river's surface with a desperate gasp, her lungs burning as she gulped in precious air. Through water-blurred vision, she spotted the mother leopard just ahead, the big cat's powerful form hauling itself onto a low bridge girder. The animal's golden eyes were wide and wild, but she was alive, gloriously, miraculously alive. Water streamed from Lark's clothes as she treaded water, watching the leopard shake herself, muscles rippling beneath her spotted coat. The mother's chest heaved with exertion, but her movements were strong and sure. She had survived both her captivity and the river's fury. A scraping sound drew Lark's attention back to the bridge above. Keegan had struggled to his feet, his rifle dragging against the wet asphalt as he tried to steady himself. Even now, after everything, the corrupt warden wouldn't give up. His face was twisted with rage as he attempted to bring the weapon to bear. But Lark was faster. Her own tranquilizer gun, secured in its waterproof holster, was already in her hands. Her chest still heaving from the swim, she swung the weapon up and squeezed the trigger. The dart found its mark, striking Keegan in the upper thigh. He staggered, a look of disbelief crossing his face as the powerful sedative took hold. Within seconds, his knees buckled and he crumpled to the ground, the rifle clattering harmlessly beside him. The wail of approaching sirens grew louder as county deputy vehicles converged on the bridge from both directions, their emergency lights painting the rain-slicked scene in alternating flashes of red and blue. Officers poured out of their vehicles, quickly securing the area and taking control of the situation. Two deputies carefully approached Keegan's unconscious form, kicking the rifle away before securing him with handcuffs. Back at the hangar, Sterling, Baird's desperate attempt to escape was coming to an equally decisive end. The game ranch owner had tried to slip away in the chaos following Keegan's flight, but alert officers had cut off his escape routes. Now he found himself cornered, his usual arrogant demeanor crumbling as deputies closed in with weapons drawn. Sterling. Baird, you're under arrest for animal trafficking and violations of the Big Cat Safety Act, an officer announced firmly, securing the handcuffs around Sterling's wrists as he read him his rights. The man who had operated with impunity for so long was finally facing Justice Dodd inside the hangar office. Imogene Baird stood straight-backed and resolute, her jaw set with determination as she handed over a thick leather ledger to the district attorney's representative. Her hands were steady. This was a moment she had worked toward for years. "Everything's in here," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. Flight logs, client payments, names of everyone involved in the hunting operations. My father kept meticulous records of his illegal activities. There won't be any loopholes for his lawyers to exploit this time. The DA's office had already secured the live stream footage from earlier, and evidence technicians were carefully documenting every aspect of the scene. The chain of evidence was being maintained with scrupulous attention to detail, ensuring that nothing could compromise the case against Sterling and his conspirators at the bridge. Nevin had made his way down to the riverbank where Lark had finally managed to swim to shore. He wrapped a thick emergency blanket around her shoulders as she coughed up river water, her body shaking with cold and exhaustion. Together, they watched the mother leopard on her perch, her breathing gradually steadying as she recovered from her ordeal. "You did it," Nevin said softly, his hand warm and reassuring on Lark's shoulder. "You actually did it." Lark couldn't answer immediately, another bout of coughing racking her frame. but her eyes never left the magnificent cat they had fought so hard to save. The mother leopard's presence was a testament to the power of refusing to look away from wrongdoing, of standing firm even when the cost seemed too high. A police escort vehicle approached slowly, lights flashing but sirens silent. In the back, secured in a proper transport carrier, was the cub, the small creature whose arrival at Lark's clinic had set this whole chain of events in motion. Officers carefully positioned the carrier where mother and cub could see each other. Reunion that followed brought tears to Lark's eyes. Mother and cub touched noses through the carrier's mesh, soft chuffing sounds passing between them. The mother leopard's entire demeanor changed, her wild-eyed tension melting away as she recognized her offspring. The cub pressed against the carrier walls, trying to get as close as possible to its dam. Wildlife officials from an accredited sanctuary had already been contacted and were en route with specialized equipment for safely transporting both leopards. Under court protection, mother and cub would be relocated to a facility where they would receive expert care and never again face the threat of being hunted for sport. As Lark watched the touching reunion, still wrapped in the warm blanket, she felt the weight of the past few days begin to lift. The evidence was secure. The perpetrators were in custody, and most importantly, both leopards had survived. Sometimes, she realized, doing the right thing came at a great cost, but moments like this made it all worthwhile. More official vehicles were arriving now, and the scene was a flurry of coordinated activity as various agencies worked together to process everything properly. The mother leopard remained calm, as if sensing that her ordeal was truly over. Her cub continued making soft sounds of contentment, the small family together again against all odds. A week after the dramatic events at the bridge, Lark stood before the charred remains of her veterinary clinic. The morning sun cast long shadows through the burned-out structure, highlighting the total devastation. Yet, despite losing everything she built, she felt strangely lighter. Her name had been fully cleared, and her actions vindicated. The district attorney had personally called to commend her decisive action in exposing criminal activities. Keegan was facing substantial prison time for his role in the illegal wildlife operation. While Sterling Baird's empire had been completely dismantled, his assets frozen pending multiple federal investigations. "It's strange," she said softly, to Nevin, who stood beside her among the ashes. "I thought losing the clinic would break me, but all I feel is ready to build something better." Nevin, who had remained steadfast through every moment of the crisis, turned to her with gentle eyes. "What do you want to build now?" he asked, his voice carrying the same quiet support that had helped her weather the storm. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with a message from the Wildlife Sanctuary's director. They were offering her a permanent partnership position, a chance to combine her veterinary skills with their protection mission. The timing felt right. "I want to join the sanctuary," Lark said firmly. "Not just treat animals, but protect them. Make exposing these systemic abuses part of my regular work." She looked at the ruins of her clinic. What happened here proved that one voice can make a difference. Across town, Imogene Baird was packing the last of her personal belongings into a small suitcase. Her testimony against her father was now officially on record, but the emotional toll weighed heavily. Though finally free from the toxic empire she'd grown up in, grief still colored her liberation. She had arranged to move to another state, determined to make a clean break from everything associated with the Baird name. Later that afternoon, Lark visited the sanctuary where the leopard, mother and cub, had been relocated. Standing at the railing of their spacious enclosure, she watched the pair with satisfaction. The cub was pressed against its mother's side, but the body language was completely different from their first meeting. Gone was the desperate clinging, born of fear. Now there was only natural, healthy attachment. "They're doing wonderfully," the sanctuary's lead keeper reported. The mother's healing well, and the cub is showing normal development now that they're together in a proper environment. Lark felt Nevin's steady presence beside her as she rested her hand on the observation rail, the warmth of his shoulder against hers reminded her that she wasn't alone anymore, hadn't been since the moment he'd shown up at her clinic ready to help. His unwavering support had helped her reclaim not just her professional purpose, but her sense of self-worth. Looking out over the sanctuary grounds, Lark could see her future taking shape, one filled with meaningful work, calculated risks, and clear purpose. She had earned this new beginning, forged it from the ashes of what was lost. As she turned away from the enclosure, she was leaving behind not just ruins, but any doubt about who she was and what she stood for. If you believe stories can heal, lift, and connect us, this channel is for you. Thanks for being here. Hit subscribe, and I'll meet you again tomorrow with something real.